Okay. I see our participant numbers have gone up, so I will kick off here. So thank you for joining us for our webinar on communications for an ever-changing employee base. I'm really excited to be hosting this session. I think what we've seen is that change is an absolute constant, but over the past 2 years, it has been faster and probably a stronger pace of change than we've ever seen in our working lives for this generation and probably generations ahead of us. And internal communications has absolutely been thrust into a spotlight where it's really critical to be looking at how our employee base is changing, but also how we therefore keep communicating with them and engage with them as they diversify and change. In terms of just a bit of housekeeping, whilst we're here, I just want to say a big thank you for joining us, taking time out of your days to watch this webinar and join my panels. Discussion. We are recording this webinar, so please note that you'll be emailed a copy following the webinar after the event to rewatch, to share, do whatever you like with our content. If you've got any questions, then we do have a Q&A option. This is a panel discussion, so it works better sometimes if we have questions, which I'll try and make space for towards the end of the session. But if you'd prefer to ask questions in a more private forum, then please do email us at hello@workbuzz.com, where I can take your questions offline with my wonderful panel and we can come back to you with our responses. My name's Mel or Melisaan Foster. I'm responsible for customer success here at WorkBuzz. But really, I've been asked to host this panel because of my background, which is very much in internal communications and engagement. I used to work in-house for the likes of HSBC countrywide as an internal communications manager, which really started my passion in employee engagement. And that led to me becoming involved with the likes of Engage for Success and the Communicate for Success tag, thought and action groups, where we delivered some toolkits, which also enabled me to achieve a Mark of Excellence award with the CIPR and also a membership with the Institute of Internal Communications, where I've been able to judge their awards for the last 2 years, and that's really helped me kind of keep my eye and my ear to the ground around what's happening in internal communications and seeing some amazing best practice as we're facing new challenges thrown at us like never before as communicators. But what's important to me is that it's great that I'm here. I've got a bit of a background in internal communications, but in reality, I'm not in-house. I'm not practicing this day by day. So I am joined by our wonderful panel of internal communications pros. So I've got Elena from Buzz Bingo, Dan from CPI Mortars, and Helen from CDL here to join me today. And so it's not going to be a presentation format because we should all be bored of these by now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and push us into hopefully a panel format where you can see their lovely faces. And I will kick off by asking them to introduce themselves as internal communicators and a bit about their backgrounds. So Elena, would you be able to kick us off with a hello and your background?
Of course, thanks Mel. Hi everyone, my name is Elena and I'm the Internal Communications Manager at Buzz Bingo. My background is actually in journalism, that's what I studied at university. And after a short time doing that, I entered the world of internal communications, starting with work experience actually at Buzz almost 5 years ago now, where it was known as Gala Bingo at the time. And over that time, my role and responsibilities have changed and developed a lot, which has led me to the position I'm now in, leading the internal comms team. Here at Buzz, we have 91 sites across England and Scotland. And as you can imagine, a diverse range of amazing colleagues in our bingo clubs and our head office, which is what we call our support centres. And we have a few of these, 2 based in Nottingham and 1 in London. So our teams are spread far and wide. Over the last 2 years, our main focus has been on our key communication channel, which is our internal colleague app, which we were very thankful to have throughout COVID as a way to update our colleagues and engage with our teams whilst our clubs were closed. And obviously the majority of the business was on furlough. And now we're finally sort of getting back to some sort of normality. We've been supporting with many projects for this year. It's always very fast paced and exciting here at Buzz. So I'm looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Elena. Very exciting. And, what a business and what a difficult time through COVID. Absolutely. Passing on to Dan for an introduction, please.
Thanks, Mel. Good morning or afternoon, depending on when you're watching this, I guess. So as Mel said, I'm Dan Holden, currently the Internal Comms and Engagement Manager for company CPI Mortars. So we manufacture dry mortar powder for the manufacturing construction industry, with around 250 colleagues spread across 9 sites throughout the UK. Majority of those are frontline workers, so mostly HGV drivers, factory operators, with the small support team in the traditional office environment, although hybrid, as I'm sure many of us are going. Quite a mixed background for me. I did geography as a degree, went into hospitality, eventually started at an airline as cabin crew, and that's how my IC journey started, of submitting content for the company newsletter. Decided to, a couple of years later, apply for the first IC role that was in the business, and that was, crikey, 9 years ago now, probably. Since then, I've worked in a little bit of a mix, did a short stint with an internal comms agency, worked for Which, the consumer group, more recently. And if that wasn't enough, in my spare time, I'm also on the CIPR Inside committee, so that's a subgroup for internal comms, and chairing that for 2022. And do a bit of mentoring as well with the IOIC. So love of IC all over the show, both at work and in the spare time. So it's great to be joining and chatting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. And last but not least, Helen.
Hi there. So I'm Helen Truman. I'm the Internal Communications Manager at CDL. So CDL is an insurtech based in Stockport. And before COVID, we were all office-based on our campus in Stockport. So we've got 600 employees. They are all kind of office desk workers. So when we did go remote, it was quite an easy transition in terms of the logistics. But in terms of internal communications, it's brought out some challenges, which I'm sure we'll go into. So I set up the internal communications function at CDL in 2019. So previously, my background was in HR. There's lots of overlaps between HR and internal comms. So employee engagement, like Mel, that's my big passion. So I was really keen to try and help coordinate those kind of messages, and we got there just in time, really. So set up our SharePoint intranet and launched that in December 2019, established kind of Teams as our kind of core channel for communications, and then of course all went remote in March 2020. So it's been a busy couple of years trying to adapt to that remote working, and obviously still evolve the communications function that we'd started. And our next big challenge will be moving to hybrid work as we plan to reopen our campus in April of this year. So as I said, my background's HR, but I'm currently studying for the diploma in internal comms with the PR Academy. So learning lots, and delighted to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you all. I'm really excited about this panel because, I mean, you can hear it yourselves, the backgrounds, their experiences is really quite diverse, and helps me cover a lot of ground, hopefully. And also links back into, if anybody's seen the internal comms profession map that IOIC were doing, how people enter this profession. It can be from a wealth of different experiences, as you can see from this panel. Even it really brings it to life that you don't need to just have this singular path into internal comms. There are lots of routes in, and it's all about a passion for people and getting things right, and the engagement, really engaging with others. So what I just want to start with is, I think what I've drawn most of the audience in with is talking about communications for an ever-changing employee base. And if we're honest, there's probably been the biggest change around for most people around COVID, has forced a lot of change for businesses. So a key question that I would like to start with is about what change have you experienced recently or just come through, and how have you had to adapt your internal communications to that challenge of the change that your workforce has experienced? So Elena, could we start with you, especially in that retail sector and Buzz Bingo? Anybody that has seen bingo clubs, unfortunately, they had to close down during lockdown, etc. So could you bring that a bit to life based on your experiences?
Yeah, of course. And obviously that was the biggest change for us over the past 18 months, 2 years, is that we had to temporarily close our bingo clubs. And throughout that time, they've been closed and open again and closed again and open again. But at the very beginning, we had to sort of ask everyone to work from home and close those pretty instantly. Which meant that those who weren't working in our bingo clubs had no access to emails, and those who were sent home had to quickly get them set up to enable them to work from home effectively with laptops, etc. So we had to quickly think of how we were going to keep colleagues engaged with the business, the changes that were happening, make sure they could stay up to date as much as possible throughout that period of time. We changed our focus completely to ensure that our colleagues felt supported throughout that time too. That was a really key and important thing for us as we went through that difficult period. So in terms of our comm strategy, that completely changed in line with that. We focus mainly on well-being support, so centered around mental, physical and financial help, and the key areas within that. We had posts going out every day of the week on our internal communications app. So that kind of, we were so thankful to have that, because without that, we couldn't talk to our colleagues who had been sent home. So we wanted to keep them engaged. So we sent sort of posts out every day of the week, switching up between fun competitions, quizzes, that we even had word searches, encouraging people to talk to each other, share about what they'd been up to in the lockdowns, and trying to build relationships between the teams so they could continue talking whilst they weren't able to see each other face to face. And that was great to see, because we saw colleagues completely utilize that. They had their own social walls on the app, and it was a great way to stay in touch with their teams. Again, I'm focusing on the app because it was the only communication channel pretty much that we used at the time. And we launched a couple of different areas on there. So one of them was an appreciation corner to recognise some of the amazing work that people were doing outside of work, helping in their local communities, etc., helping with the NHS and celebrating that. We also launched another wall called Share Swap Support, so people could share their hobbies and learn from each other. And something which loads of people loved getting involved in was something we called the Wellbeing House Cup, where we split people into teams based on their region within the business, and whether they were in support centre or club, and got them involved in loads of different activities, which worked really well in terms of nothing to do with work, but helping people look after themselves during that period of time, and also stay in touch with the business too. And in amongst all of that, we had regular business updates from our exec team. So we turned a lot to videos, and we managed to create a community on the app where colleagues were informed, but also having fun and staying connected. I think more recently, probably similar to Helen, we've adopted a sort of hybrid working approach for those who are in our support centre. We've launched a new office, or opened a new office in Nottingham. But with that, we launched a hybrid working trial. So all our colleagues have the choice whether they want to work from home or in the office, and it's completely up to them. So in terms of that, our internal communications have had to adapt to support those colleagues with everything new that we've introduced, but also how can we make that work well? A big example is we used to have what we called Boulevard broadcasts, which is where our exec team would stand up and update everyone in the office physically, and then we play a fun game of bingo. Obviously, we couldn't do that anymore, so we've managed to use Teams to replicate it as much as possible in a live event situation, and that's been working well for us. So it's just thinking about sort of how you can continue keeping people connected through to the channels that you've got and utilizing them. But yeah, it's been a journey.
Definitely. I mean, it's amazing what you've done, and obviously I think as a business it can be really hard when you have to shut down. That's the reality of it. How do you keep people engaged and let them know that you still care although you're not working directly, you're still on furlough, we still want to keep in touch. And it sounds like you did a great job swerving and making sure that the content was focused about them, engaging to them at a time where people were feeling, a little bit of furlough, them and us. Are things ever going to restore to normal? But yeah, the social and fun side is really critical in that, isn't it? And
yes, I think so.
And I think also it's great to see almost that exec buy-in to that adaptation of a comm strategy. It's all of a sudden it's not about you telling us what to say, it's about what can we do for the greater good of people, and that's a wonderful thing to have leaders that bought into that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, that's really useful, and I think in retail it's and Buzz Bingo, the bingo halls was shut down. It's quite a tough situation, but I appreciate that there's different businesses here where some had to keep working. So what I just wanted to do was ask almost the same question to Helen. Helen, I think you said it was a bit simpler for you because we have the equipment, we have the technology. But still, did you have to look at adapting your internal communication styles?
Absolutely. I mean, we also had a big focus on well-being, and our first thing that we did was make sure that everyone was kept really up to date with not only just what was happening in terms of COVID, but also what our kind of thinking was around that and our policies and guidance around that. But we wanted to adapt what we did have in the office to remote work so that people still had that sense of fun, similar to what you were saying. And so we had things like we still have NCO concerts, so with the Northern Chamber Orchestra, and they were face-to-face, or we'd give away free tickets as part of our kind of CSR engagement. But we actually instead we asked our CDL population if they'd like to vote for some songs that they'd like the Northern Chamber Orchestra to play for us, and they did us a little bespoke concert, and we ran those seasonally throughout the last kind of couple of years. And most recently, they played at our drive-through Christmas grotto. So you may have seen this on social media, but we wanted to try and kind of reconnect people back to our campus, but we knew we couldn't quite open the doors just yet. So the Northern Chamber Orchestra Brass Quintet played a little set for us on site, and we had people drive through a Christmas grotto to collect their Christmas hamper, and had members of the senior management team with Santa hats on, kind of waving at people as they came to collect their hampers. And it's just trying to kind of keep connected with people in a safe way, try and look after people's kind of emotional well-being as well as their physical well-being. We had virtual boot camps, whereas previously we would have had on-site boot camps. We'd previously kind of trained up our mental health first aiders, but we also engaged with Headspace to launch Headspace for Work, to give people that additional kind of option of using that app. We also had, we used to have kind of coffee mornings for our new starters, so we adapted those to be virtual coffee mornings. Our town halls became Teams Live events. We also started a breakfast with the CEO initiative, which was kind of the first Friday of every month, we'd send everyone a little breakfast gift, and about 10 to 15 people would sit down with the CEO, and that's still ongoing and has been really successful. I think so having that blend of both the kind of company-wide Teams broadcasts and also the kind of more informal conversational settings with leaders has really helped keep people connected both to the strategy and to each other, and also having lots of kind of listening events and forums which kind of supplement our surveys, which we send out every 6 months, just to make sure that people have that opportunity to feed back in a more anecdotal way, because sometimes what you want to say isn't captured in the survey question. So having that opportunity to really explore it and ad lib a bit is what people really need. So we've replicated that as much as possible virtually, but I'd say it's been challenging because not everybody wants to be part of that. So how do you reach the people that don't really want to join that forum and they'd rather give feedback in a different way? And you can't just bump into them at the brew point. So how do you reach them? And that's still something we're still exploring. We still ask lots of kind of questions to our people about how they like to be communicated with, and we use different channels to try and reach the people where they like to hang out the most. So we have Teams, we have Yammer, we use email as well, and we also encourage people to just come and talk to us or their line managers, or come to one of these forums. So it's been a challenge just trying to reach to make sure we reach everybody and nobody feels kind of isolated in that. not sure if I've answered your question, Mel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it just kind of brings back the importance of omni-channel when changes happen, but also I think multi-channel is going to be critical for everybody as we walk into the future. And the more that I speak to more and more clients, more organizations, regardless of where you sit, we've got this challenge with hybrid working or remote working. Because we don't have people physically there, we're going to have to adapt channels and use a more scattered approach, but not too much of a scatter, which I'm sure you all have the joy of rationalizing your comm stack as well. So no, that's really interesting. Thank you.
One thing that we've also done, which I meant to mention, was around kind of trying to adapt things that our developers would have done in the office face to face. So we have squads that really bounce off each other and get ideas from each other as they're sat next to each other. So they've actually come up with the concepts of kind of a white noise channel where they're all online at the same time but aren't necessarily talking, so that if one of them wants to ask a question or share an idea or thought, then they can do that. And actually somebody within that team has also started a lunchtime disco, so it's really that blend of like nice. Yeah, a bit of a blend of fun, and then let's just play some tunes and then let's have some work and share some ideas. So it's people have really come together in this. I think it's been a really interesting time for comms and for working in general.
Yeah, and I think that bottom-up approach for comm strategy is critical as well, isn't it? And it's it's not just about what we want to tell them; it's about what can they share with us, and it's keeping the culture alive, although we're remote, and it's something that anybody can tune into, whether you're in the office or still sitting at home. So it's good to see them, party disco. I love a bit of a disco, so that's always fun. Oh, wonderful! Thank you both for those. I think that COVID is probably the most critical change that's kind of swooped in on us. But I think the other thing to talk about is about these hard to reach audiences. And Dan, I'm really conscious that where you work, it's a little bit different, whereby people have to absolutely be present, and you're probably working throughout the whole of lockdown because everybody will still need water despite them knowing or not. It's a critical part of the supply chain. So could you kind of bring to life a bit how you've kept in touch with your audiences?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been an interesting journey. So for background, I joined the company August this year, and there was no internal comms function prior to that. So it was a real wow. Okay, we set up from scratch, but you've got a moment, and as you said, Mel, that throughout COVID, there was probably 2 months where our colleagues weren't in the factories and plants, but other than that, they have been operating, so to speak. And even at my previous company, we were very much, call center based, and it's an interesting one when we talk about remote workers because it's nothing new. If I rewind back to when I started the airline, our cabin crew, our pilots, never ventured into the head office. They were always remote around the world. But I think COVID's really thrust us forward in actually going, you know what, we need to stop talking and worrying about how we're going to do it. We need to get on. And it's interesting listening to both Elena and Helen talk about different approaches. And I think a lot of us have had the great opportunity to almost take what was our IC strategy that was probably pages and pages, rip it in half and go, we need to be a lot quicker and adapt and evolve. And I think maybe gone are the days, if I can bravely say it, that strategy should be a live document. You should be continuing evolving it. Our channel matrices that we've got in place, we should be constantly going back to them and going, are they still fit for purpose? And so for the hard to reach audiences, it was a real, it was an interesting one because I managed luckily to get out for a couple of months visiting colleagues, and I echo Helen's point that she said there was actually what works for them, because it could be really easy to try and solutionize and go, right, we're launching an app, we're launching Teams, we're launching SharePoint, and start rolling out all this tech solution, which is often the case. What I found was actually line managers are the crux and the key to for me, in that actually our drivers rock up at 6 a.m. in the morning. They're away from the fact, they're away by 6:30. They might reappear about 11, do another load, and the opportunity to interact is so tiny. So it's that actually, how do I maximize those few minutes that they might be in the breakout room? And I think everyone echoed it earlier, was actually that scattered approach. I'm thinking, right, how do I visually catch someone's attention through posters. And I know some people cringe when you say the word posters, you know, they're like, no, we should be digital, but there's still a place for every channel if it's right for your organization. For me, it's looking at how do I jump on a Teams call for half hour with the 11 managers across the UK and quickly update them, ask them what they need for me to then provide crib sheets. So, you know, we're starting to do kind of those that are ahead of things, going, actually, here's your 3 or 4 bullet points to make it a bit manageable. And knowing that some of these managers are maybe doing, you know, 10, 11-hour days, I don't want to be another person in their inbox trying to go, oh, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. You know, it's almost, here's a tool to try and help in your team meetings. So it's understanding what's already in place, I think, for your remote workers. Like, actually, do they already have team catch-ups with their managers, and how can you add value to that meeting, you know, and not come across as, oh, Dan from corporate comms has said that I need to tell you about this. It's more like, actually, as a manager, I want to tell you about this. I think, you know, it's trying to take a back step and, you know, support the managers, support your colleagues, you know, and listen as well. I think, you know, it's, COVID's given us the opportunity to almost break down those barriers of office walls and go, actually, everyone's got access to everyone at the same level, you know, whether it's through apps, email, however it is. You know, and I've had people start to email me, you know, that don't have a corporate account, even though they've got access to our app, and go, actually, oh, you know, I don't do apps, you know, they're, you know, maybe people in their 60s, 70s that actually is a bit too much for them, you know, it's not, they're not feeling as confident with it. So it's going, well, okay, what can I provide you with? You know, and actually, so I say back to basics, which is really embarrassing to say, but actually going back to print in some aspects. You know, we hear a lot about print doesn't have a place, digital, it's timely. Don't ignore it. You know, for me, print has been massive for my remote workers. Things even as basic as having QR codes on some printed documents for me actually was a real big win, because it gave me that bit of measurement that I can go, oh, actually, I can track how many people are scanning that. So people are looking. You know, I think we're too afraid of actually posters go out the door, get posted out, and what happens to them, you know. But it's that coming back to your suite of channel matrix and going, okay, if I'm pushing out this message, that works for maybe 60%. So how am I catching the other 40 and blending that mix? And for me now, it's been great to be back out on site. So, you know, I'm very fortunate, 1 or 2 days a week, I hot desk at our different factories. And by that, I'm either plonking myself in the crew room, you know, just with a brew for the day and catching people as and when. And that's not to jump on them and say, have you heard about it? But just to build back those relationships. Because even though we're a small company, when you take 200 people and spread them across 11 sites as far north as Scotland and Southampton in the south of England, that's really, really hard to try and see everyone. But yeah, there's a big mix there to play. Yeah,
definitely. And it demonstrates that need to know your audience very well and keep learning and listening to your audience about what their needs are and how they prefer to absorb information and communications. I think your point around different generations there, Dan, is one that resonates really well with me, as in, I mean, I'm looking forward to the future of internal comms where we have to deliver messages in meme form, because it will happen, or in TikTok videos, and we have to be ready to adapt to those needs.
I think your point about adapting is key. Like, I tried video quite early on and it just didn't go, it didn't accept it. But yeah, there's also a great piece of research by Jenny Fields that I used. So she produced Remotely Interested, you know, great insights. So yeah, there's plenty out there on the subjects as well.
Definitely. And that's a pin note, actually. If you haven't looked at Jenny's research and about remote work, then please, yeah, maybe we can add that link, Rebecca. Well, we'll have a think about how we get that into the follow-up. We've had a question come in that I'm going to actually pop in now, which is from somebody asking about how can you balance an omni-channel strategy with not irritating people by sending them the same message over and over. Now, from my experience, I've always said, tell them something 10 times and they still don't hear you. But people that are living this day to day, does anybody want to field that question?
I'm happy to give it a go if no one wants to. But
go for it, Dan.
Feel free to chip in the two.
Yeah, I'm sure.
My view, and it's interesting, we have this conversation as well in CIPR Insight, actually, because if we're promoting a particular event, piece of research, I think sometimes when you as a communicator are promoting it, you see it so much more than what your audience is. So it's, you take Twitter, for example, like you go, oh, I've tweeted about this like 10 times this week. Well, you might have done, but things disappear off people's timelines so quick. So I think always keep that in mind, that you're seeing this so much more than your audience is. So whilst it might feel like to you, oh, actually, I've put this in our weekly roundup email, I've put it on the intranet notice board on Monday, so you might put it on the digital screen on Wednesday, you're probably more conscious of that. But the chances are, if someone's not seen it in one place, actually they've not seen it a lot. So I think if you get to a point where you're feeling like you're constantly pushing, it's normally things like engagement surveys. I always hear is a great one, that people go, oh, we're trying to force completion rates and get it up, and they're constantly bombarded. Just think about actually where's all your touch points for all your audience, and it probably comes back to your channel and audience matrix. Like, actually, this group of people I know get, I don't know, the manager's weekly cascade, they have an area on our intranet for managers, and have confidence that those are the right things. People will generally soon tell you if you're becoming a bit too much of a spam as a department, in my experience, or you'll start to see very quickly your analytics drop is normally the other thing. So keep an eye on, measurement is key, and that's a topic for another day, is all I'm going to say on that.
Following on from that, I think one of the ways we sort of listen and shape our strategy is to use analytics in terms of what channels engage our audiences the most. So for example, video versus written communication. Videos tend to work really well for us. So getting the messages out via video would be much more effective than written or more traditional routes. So we use that a lot to sort of gauge which channels we should use to reach wider audiences. But also, for example, we have 250 people who aren't on our colleague app, so how would we reach them? So traditional channels do also still work. So it's about knowing your audience and utilizing the channels that you've got available to you, I think.
Yeah. And just to add there, I think it's also about looking at what the channel does. So for example, Yammer is much easier to engage with in terms of likes and comments and that type of thing. So if you're looking for that more kind of social engagement, if you post something on there, you're more likely to get some discussion around it. Whereas if you're just posting it on an intranet page, for example, you know, that's going to be read, and then you'll get the analytics, but you're not going to get much more kind of commentary around it. So we try and kind of use the channels to engage with people in slightly different ways, but also signposting back to the main kind of source of truth, if you like. If the kind of core content is on the intranet, but would post and signpost from Yammer back to that core content and enable people to comment on it on Yammer, if that makes sense. So just looking at what the channels are designed for and using them to engage with people in that way.
Definitely. Thank you all. That was really, good answers all around, and hopefully, got that person saying thanks. So that's great. Thank you all for your help on that. Okay, and then just another question from me is about your expectations for the year ahead. You know, what's the top challenge that you've got coming your way, and what are you anticipating? But how are you going to attack those challenges as the internal communications people in your organization? So first off, Dan, do you want to kick us off on this question in terms of what challenges you've got coming?
I tell you what, Mel, if you create a crystal ball for this question and give us the answer, you'll be, I'm sure, a millionaire by tomorrow.
I know.
But I think for us, it's very much, I say back to basics. We touched on earlier about actually we've been really quick in being able to get new channels out there. I remember when those started scarily a couple of years ago now. Microsoft Teams just exploded, suddenly like the amount of internal communicators, I would see going, oh my goodness, we're rolling that out overnight to hundreds of people, help, where do we go? So I think now we've seized that opportunity to go, actually, suddenly budgets have appeared and we've got all this tech, often the case, but it's now reining back a little bit, taking stock to go, actually, we've had good, 2 years, let's take the silver lining here, we've had 2 years to try new channels, try new things. And one thing that I don't think we're very good at always as a profession is stopping channels that maybe aren't effective. I think there's always that fear of going, oh, but if we turn this off, is someone going to get upset or miss out? So I think now is a good time to go, actually, we're almost channel overload in some cases. And that for me is a challenge ahead, and going, actually, what's the right channel for our people? You know, what's maybe right to switch off? What do we need to adapt and go, actually, it was great for everyone, but maybe this is just for our management community now, because your analytics will tell you that story to some degree. And also to make sure that we keep employee voice going. I think, I've seen so many great organizations leverage two-way communications throughout this, because suddenly everyone's gone virtual. And actually we're all equal now. We're not all, it wasn't a case of the comms team was sat at head office and everyone else was maybe out in the field. Actually, we're all in the same boat to some sense. So I think it's about, for me, the challenge is now our channel usage, also keeping voice throughout. And importantly, we've had an opportunity to really shine both as individuals and as a profession, and go, actually, this is the role we play, and even more so the value we add for our people, for our business. And to keep that, I do worry that some organizations, comms was thrust to the forefront in terms of that crisis reactionary piece. But, now we're getting to a steady state. Companies are going, yep, hybrid's for us. This is how we're going to stay as an organization. And it's for us not to lose that, I don't want to say seat at the table, for us to lose that influence and relationships that we built. So it's keeping some of that forefront. So that, for me, some of the challenges that I think, definitely on the horizon at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think across all of them, and I think when we first spoke and I was talking to you about this panel, you said, it's about doing less but doing it better as well, which I think is a mantra that I could take into my own life and personally, but it's a brilliant thing to be mindful of. In terms of kind of challenges in CDL, Helen, or what you're experiencing, what's your thoughts on that question?
So for us, it's really about this shift to hybrid working. So as I said previously, we were all on campus and then we're now all remote. So it's a massive culture change, I think, going to hybrid work and getting that blend to work effectively. So we're very conscious of the fact that we've got people in the organisation who are desperate to get back to work and to do things like our human hungry hippos and all the fun charity and volunteering events that we used to do when we were on site, and other things like the agile meetups and all of that. And we're planning things such as welcome backpacks, welcome back events. Lots of free cake and coffee will be going on, I'm sure. And it will be, a lot of people will get so much energy from that face-to-face communication and collaboration. But we're also very conscious of the fact that there are people that have some anxiety around going back to the office due to COVID, and their journey there is going to be very different and individual. Everybody's got in a different place on that journey. And also some people just now have realised that they prefer remote work. So trying to transition to hybrid work and keep everyone connected to the strategy, keep everyone connected to each other, and keep that sense of fun for everybody, no matter where they're working, is going to be our big kind of challenge for this year and probably beyond this year, if we're honest. And we're looking at how we might do that. And I don't have all the answers yet. I mean, as I said, we're a tech company, so we do have lots of technical solutions in terms of booking systems and Teams rooms, which is meant to make the experience of hybrid working much more pleasant. But I'm sure there's still going to be challenges in terms of reaching everybody and making sure people don't feel isolated if they're not in the office. Yes. So what we're going to do really is just trial it. So we're going to have a bit of a phased approach and just keep listening to our people and keep reviewing and getting feedback. And we know we don't have the answers. We've not done it before. So just keeping that kind of authenticity around, accepting that we don't have the answers and listening to people as we're on that journey. So that's going to be our biggest challenge.
Yeah, and I think that resonates so well across what I'm hearing across all other organisations that can work hybrid and are introducing that as this is our standpoint from here. It's a draw back onto site, where what carrots can you get out to attract everybody back on, without getting the stick out, because nobody wants to do that because it will have an adverse effect on the employee force. And it demonstrates again the need of the focus of what we kind of started in, which we were talking about, well-being, the need to have fun, the need to engage, bring people in and draw them in with the what's in it for them, which tends to be more of a social and fun element, but then, you know, also utilize that time to give business updates and make sure that they're using the time to collaborate and enjoy that culture at work. But yeah, I must ask you about human hungry hippos at another point in time, by the way. That sounds like something that I'd be very good at, to be honest, if you ask anybody at WorkBuzz. And it might be something that we have to do here.
You just need a skateboard and some washing baskets, and you're there.
All right. Well, okay. We'll get some. We'll have to share that with Big. Brilliant. And finally, Elena, do you have kind of your challenges ahead and how you're going to be combating them?
Yeah, some of ours are actually very similar. I think we've come from a place where we've seen a huge engagement on our internal colleague app throughout the last couple of years as we've used that channel and utilized it for the fun, engaging activities. And now everyone's back to work, they're back to day job, concentrating on projects. So we're thinking, how can we reinvigorate it and keep people engaged and get back to that place where there's a bit of a buzz around it as well. No
puns intended. Yeah, of course.
That's what I was thinking. And also from a hybrid perspective, this is brand new for us as well. It's something we've never done before. And although we launched back in November, our hybrid trial, we've also had a month of lockdown where the advice was to work from home. So we're still sort of learning as we go with it, and thinking, how do we keep people connected in that sense when we don't have everyone in the office and everyone's so widespread. I think people have got so used to working from home as well. There's sort of a reluctance from some to work in the office, or sometimes don't see the benefit because you've got the great channels and technology to help you, enable you to work collaboratively at home. But we know that there are benefits to working in person and face to face as well. So it's how can we get a good blend of those and make sure that everyone's working effectively how they want to, but we can also have a sense of togetherness at the same time, which is tricky. And as Helen said, we're still sort of working through that, and we don't have all the answers, but as it's brand new, I think lots of people are in the same position, so we can learn from each other.
And I think that's really important, as in that learning from each other and keeping talking to other internal communicators that are in similar spaces, or HR professionals. I know that they're also concerned about how do we keep this going. And something that I will take away as an action personally is that we've just launched a community called our EX Hub, Employee Experience Hub. I think we will absolutely set up a community that's more dedicated about that hybrid working challenge that we're now all facing into, to enable people that are on this webinar, whether you're a WorkBuzz client or not, you can join our EX Hub, but it gives you a space to share best practice. So we will do that and follow up with this and creating more things. Just looking at maybe one more question from the audience as we kind of wrap up. I'm just looking, Shanine, hello Shanine. Just got efforts to help staff fully embrace hybrid working. Shanine's just sharing some good best practice. Working well in action is run odd town hall with the CEO and colleagues who are in the room. So they feed off the audience present, and then hopefully on the teams will feel that. I like that a lot, as in that hybrid piece. Use the people that are physically there, but also then it enables people to feel the human sense of it. But any kind of experience from anybody else in running hybrid events at this point in time?
Not yet, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Check back.
Check back soon.
We had not currently, but when I was at Which previously, very similar challenge of going, actually, how do you replicate that feeling of community? The key bit, I think, was for us is making the conversation human from the leadership team, and rather than it being perhaps 10-15 minutes of business updates, is getting your leaders to actually share, what they're feeling the same. I remember the first when we brought our CEO at the time on the call, she was sat in her downstairs I say cloakroom, it was like a tiny little study, but her laptop was on books and people could see that, and that wasn't staged. That was just the reality of, actually, I've got kids at home. There was, one of the little ones ends up on, I think, one of the second or third one coming into the call and, wave it. But you know what? And that's the reality of, we're all in the same situation. Just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you've got necessarily always a home office, duplicate screens, peace and quiet. So I think for us, it was that human connection and going, oh, actually, you know what? The boss is in the same situation as us, or, oh, actually, I've got it a little bit better because I don't have little ones running at home, or. So yeah, that for us I think helps bridge that gap.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing I've seen work really well is thinking about when you're doing activities or exercises, a bit of a fun team build that works in a hybrid environment. So, is there certain quizzes or apps that you can have on your phone, or something else that you can engage with? Just a bit of gamification always engages an audience, as we all probably widely know, and that hopefully catches their attention and enables you to go a bit further. Right. Thank you, Janine. Great question though. And hopefully we can share even more experiences as we kind of open up that conversation and keep walking into the unknown waters together. And thank you, Elena, for answering that other question somebody asked about what app you use. Right, well, I think that concludes our session. That has just stormed by, but please, if you've got any other questions, do email hello@workbuzz.com. I can always pick up with our panel offline to come back to you with any answers that we might not have got to today. But a huge thank you from me to the audience members, but also our wonderful panel. It means the world to bring your experiences and share so openly and transparently the challenges that you've kind of come across and how you've overcome them. So thank you all for your time and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.